Hello and welcome in to this week's edition of the Walkthrough. I am your host, Intern Joe Macheca. Joined with me is one of my favorite recurring guests, if not the favorite, the one, the only, Mr. Tyler Head of 1075 Game. How are we doing this fine Sunday evening?
Doing good. They say third time's the charm. So excited to be here for the first time live. I know you guys are doing that now. So excited to be along for the ride today.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be a good time. All the viewers have been saying do it live so we can have the, conversation aspect of it. Mike Burns says, "What's up? What's up, Mike?" Getting
Sweet.
getting ready to talk some football. We also have some basketball talk for you as well. But Tyler, we will start with football because this is the SEC, and
Yes.
it really does just mean more. Shane Beamer has been able to do a lot in the transfer portal so far. They have a top 5 class as it stands, according to On3. So I guess give me your initial thoughts on how Shane's been able to do in the transfer portal so far, and we'll get into the gritty here in a second.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thought they've done a really good job so far. Now, of course, you can't fully give a grade to a transfer class till you see them go out on the field and actually perform. But the caliber of talent that they've brought in and addressing the areas of need, particularly when it comes to running back, because that was a spot that we knew last offseason they really needed some help in, and we thought they were going to get somebody. Went after Logan Diggs, who I've seen it up going to LSU, and then you roll into the fall with a Division II guy and Mario Anderson and DeKieron Joyner, who had never played the spot before, and you had your struggles, and part of that was on the offensive line, but the running back spot definitely needed some help there, and going out there and having a headline by a guy like Rocket Sanders obviously gets a lot of people excited, and a lot of hope that room's going to take a pretty sizable jump next year. And also bringing in Oscar Attaway and Jawarren Howell from South Carolina State, two solid guys as well, playing at their respective levels that I think are going to be solid complementary pieces to what Sanders is going to do, in addition to JJ McDowell coming back from his injury, not to mention JJ Braswell, who, we'll see take hopefully a big step in in year number 2. Wide receiver, obviously, you lose Juice Wells, and that's a big deal because we all thought that he was coming back, and all the anticipation was that he was coming back, and then he leaves and goes on to Ole Miss, which that'll be interesting when they come into town on October the 5th, I think it is. But they've gone out there and they've addressed that. They've gotten in some several guys, and from a size standpoint, all the guys pretty similar, around that 5'10", 5'11", where you're gonna have a lot of guys that can kind of take that slot position that Amirian Brown leaves behind. I'd still think you're probably going to need to go out there and get somebody that's a little bit taller, 6'2", 6'3", that you can primarily line up wide to the outside. Now you still have a guy like Nick Harbor that we're hoping to take a pretty big sizable jump in year number 2. So we'll see what happens with that. And of course, you still have the spring portal session that's going to be coming up here in a couple months. You don't have to address all those needs as of right now. Then just a number of guys on defense, particularly when it comes to the defensive line, there's not going to be a more senior laden group than the defensive line for South Carolina, which, last year you had struggles through all years, your defense. And when it came to the defensive line, Tonka and Boogie had their moments. Barrett as well. They didn't have a whole lot in terms of coming off the edge. So bringing in some guys there too. And again, it's really hard to say what these guys are going to be until you actually see them out there on the field. And there were plenty of guys last year that came in the transfer portal. We thought, wow, this guy's going to be great. And then he didn't end up doing a whole lot. So you're not trying to get too far ahead of yourself. But again, from a national perspective, South Carolina has made a lot of noise in the portal, and I'm excited to see what else they do. I think you still need to bring in a quarterback. That's brought in Davis Bevel as a preferred walk-on the other day, but I think ideally you'd still like to bring in a transfer quarterback, as that just in case, as we all do anticipate that Lenore Sellers is gonna end up being that guy. But especially for a guy that's gonna be running the ball like he is, you're gonna be taking hits, your helmet might fall off, and you want to make sure you have a good solid backup and not just having to throw Dante Reno out there as a true freshman if worse came to worse.
Yeah, absolutely. They're actually looking for a QB2 right now, and it's kind of a sticky situation. We go through it every time on this show. But you're right. You want Lenore Sellers to be the guy, and you want to bring in somebody who is going to challenge that, right?
Right.
If you can bring in a guy that's going to beat out, the in-state guy, the next, second coming for the throne, then that's a guy that you want. But ideally, you want Lenore to start, and then you want a backup that's more than capable of coming in, so that we don't have to put too much on Dante Reno. As a true freshman, Dante will be able to shoulder that load eventually, but as a true freshman, and rolling early certainly helps, but without bowl practice and stuff like that, so you need to go get somebody. And it is kind of a weird search for essentially a QB2, if you will.
Yeah.
It is kind of, it's a weird search. And it's not like the transfer portal, like when Shane was looking for quarterbacks and found Spencer Rattler. It's not quite the same search. You're looking for a different kind of role. And also, a different kind of player. You couldn't guarantee anything to Spencer Rattler, but the job was wide open, right? This one, you have a favorite, and now you have to come in and upset that favorite. A lot of guys, especially in the portal, and how how much guys move nowadays. It's really, really, really hard to find a spot, stick in it, and have success. So that's one of the bigger things at quarterback. Yeah, Tyler, I also did want to ask you, do you think Juice Wells is going to get booed when he comes back?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be too warm of a reception, especially, because again, I go back to it looked like he was going to be coming back, puts out that tweet saying, hey, I wasn't holding out or whatever he ended up saying, and made it clear to what we thought at that point in time meant, hey, he's coming back to Carolina for 2024. Now, he'd never put Carolina or Gamecocks or anything in that tweet. So I guess we're naive on that front. But then, a week and a half later, we find out he's in the transfer portal and obviously ends up going to Ole Miss. So, yeah, I don't think he's going to get a very warm welcome when they come back to town for what's going to be a very, very tough matchup, because obviously Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss have done an incredible job in the transfer portal this offseason, not to mention keeping some of the talent that they had on this past year's roster. Yeah, that's going to be a tough one on what's already going to be a very challenging October for South Carolina next year.
Yeah, it's going to be a battle. And I mean, I don't necessarily blame South Carolina fans either. Just kind of the way it all went down. Tyler, I'm sure you can probably feel the same way about the whole Juice Wells situation. Again, is it classy? No, not necessarily. Could you represent South Carolina better? Yes. But
Sure.
again, there is a time and a place to voice your frustrations, and that is one way of doing it, right? So that's one thing. William, will Nick Saban retirement help or hinder the Gamecocks? Obviously, Alabama on the schedule for the Gamecocks this upcoming year. And then Brock also asks, is our Gamecock Central guy now? Heck yeah, he's a friend of the program, always helping us out here, Gamecock Central, one way or another. But yeah, I'm throwing two things at you. Gamecock Central guy now, and then the Saban retirement whole thing.
Yeah, so I kind of consider myself like the cousin of Gamecock Central because I work with Wes and Chris obviously every single day. I do stuff with you. We have Jack Veltri on a couple times a week for basketball. So I work with all you guys. I don't receive a paycheck from Gamecock Central like you guys. So I'm close enough to the family, but not necessarily in the Gamecock Central family, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Our favorite relation, if you will,
Exactly.
to our sister station, to our sisters over there at 107.5 The Game. So yes, but yeah, Alabama on the schedule this upcoming year. Obviously, the GOAT retiring. That was a very, very big deal. And Kalen DeBoer taking over quite fast. Shout out to his agent. There's a big story about how his agent, also Saban's agent, negotiated all of that, and meanwhile also getting everyone else raises. Tyler, first off, does the Saban retirement? It obviously helps South Carolina a little bit, right? So go walk me through the South Carolina angle of this, and then we'll get into, I guess, nitty-gritty of the rest of it.
Yeah, in a way, it makes you almost kind of seem like that game's a little bit more attainable. Going on the road to Tuscaloosa, taking on a Nick Saban coach team, that seems like an insurmountable challenge because very few teams over the past 15 years have been able to do that. And not to say that Alabama's still not going to be tough because they're still going to have a lot of talented guys in that roster. Kalen DeBoer is a very good coach. I'm going to be very interested to see. And again, we're just a couple days removed from DeBoer being announced as Alabama's head coach. How many guys leave in the portal? How many guys come in? I know Will Rogers announced that he was coming in as he had transferred to play for him at Washington and now just jumps over to him at Alabama. I really want to see what this roster looks like for Alabama over the course of the spring. And obviously as they get closer and closer to the season to get an idea. And again, there's still going to be 4- and 5-star guys on there, but a guy like Isaiah Bond went ahead and jump shipped. He's going to Texas. Like, you do have talented guys that aren't going to want to stick around to play for Kalen DeBoer because there is this air of uncertainty. And again, I don't doubt that he can be a good coach, but is it going to be the same dominant force that we've known Alabama to be for years and years and years? I don't know. So again, I'm not sitting here saying that, oh, well, now South Carolina is suddenly a favorite going to Tuscaloosa, but it gives you a little bit of a better feeling than, hey, you're got to go play Nick Saban in his home and try and beat him. It's like, okay, well, you feel slightly better, even if that's only like 5%. So a lot to learn about this Alabama team before we get there. And again, I expect them to be good. But I don't know, maybe South Carolina can go in there and surprise some folks.
Yeah, I mean, there was always the element of being able to pull off kind of a shock and awe upset with South Carolina, having had Nick Saban's number beforehand. I think this kind of opens the door to just a win like straight up. It's like, all right, like we don't necessarily know what we're gonna get yet. I think by the time that we get there, like Tyler said, we'll know what this Alabama team is made of. But I mean, until that point, we don't necessarily know. I mean, Kalen DeBoer is good at recruiting transfers, and especially at Alabama, it's going to be kind of easy. And it's when you have Saban kind of floating around as well, I think that's another big deal because he's going to be there, and it's slowly going to taper off, and but he's going to be involved in the program, and I think that's a very, very, very valuable asset, not only for DeBoer but also for the program and being able to keep recruits in because you're still going to play for him in a capacity, right? It's still under, his image, if you will. So I think the door is open now for, we'll wait and see what Alabama looks like going into that game. But I think it's, again, it's more possible now than it was.
Yeah, and I like the fact that South Carolina is not like Alabama's first SEC opponent of the season. They'll get Georgia to start off SEC play in late September. So at least we'll get a couple of weeks of actual like quality opponents to see Alabama going up against to get a real good feel of what they're going to be. And that's kind of the crazy thing about college football these days with the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff is it's so hard to predict what teams are going to be on a year-to-year basis. We sit here right now and look at the Kentucky game in week number 2, and it's like, well, South Carolina beat Kentucky at the end of this season, but they're going to be a completely different team next year. You got Brock Vandagriff coming in at quarterback. You got the running back from Ohio State, got a couple of wide receivers coming from around the country. Like they're going to be a completely different team that we're not going to see them play a quality opponent. They have Southern Miss in week number 1. So that game's going to be a big question mark of what the quality of that opponent is going to be. And that's, again, you kind of feeling things out for the first couple of weeks. But again, Alabama will have played a couple different SEC teams before South Carolina gets to see them. So we'll get a gauge of just how good or maybe how not good they are through the first couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah, 100%. And again, it's going to be one of those wait and see. And, depending on also the talent as well. Whenever a new coach takes over, no matter what, transfer portal era or not, you're going to have guys leaving and coming back. I mean, you saw that with Coach Prime a little bit. Obviously, he wasn't inheriting a whole lot at Colorado. But again, there's going to be first-year bumps and humps, if you will, as compared to if Saban were just continuing. So, yeah, that's a big deal and obviously a big story in college football. So we had to talk about that. Todd chimes in. Hello, Todd. How are we doing? Appreciate you coming in. So the Gamecocks also added James Coley to the staff. Tyler, I'm sure you've been talking about that a little bit before the weekend, before you guys retired on the airwaves for the weekend. But walk me through what you're seeing from him. Obviously, he's going to coach wide receivers, Justin Stepp taking a step back. You see it from Coley.
Yeah, I like the ad. Coley's obviously been around the game for a long time, been an offensive coordinator at Georgia, Florida State, Miami. So he's called plays at a bunch of different places. And again, that's an area of need there with, moving over to coach the wide receivers. And the way that I was thinking about it, it's just another offensive mind to add to the room. And I think about a guy like Dow Loggins, this being his first year as the offensive coordinator. I'm sure he learned a lot. And I'm sure a lot of things that he's still coming along with when it comes to calling plays in college, because that's just not something that he's done a lot of. He's been in the NFL for the majority of his career. And to have a guy like James Coley, being that room, can only help him the entire offense. I feel like, maybe put some ideas in his head or point out some things that maybe he'd not thought about up to that point. So again, it's just another good mind to bring to the room. Very good recruiter. When you look at his, recruiting going back to his days at Georgia and Florida State and all that kind of stuff, some really high level talent, 4- and 5-star guys, George Pickens when he was at Georgia, Nick O'Leary when he was at, Florida State, as well as countless countless others. So he's got a good foothold in, Georgia and Florida and areas like that where, talent is very, very rich. I'll be excited to see, kind of what he brings to the table for South Carolina from a recruiting standpoint as well. But again, when you talk about assistants and stuff like that, it can be hard to gauge because again, they're not the one calling the plays, and you kind of got to look at player development and all that kind of stuff. But he's got a whole room of wide receivers that are kind of new to the program. So it's not like he's having to get up to speed with all these other players. Everybody's kind of coming in at once and kind of trying to get on the same page together. So the next couple months over the spring and all that'll be very important. And we'll see what the wide receiver room looks like when fall rolls around. Again, probably need to add maybe at least one more guy and see how they fare when they get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you said. Seeing a lot of football is the biggest thing. New set of eyes, right? Sometimes you can get some of the same coaches, not to discount Justin Stepp. He's a good football mind and is going to be a good coach. Whatever Justin Stepp's future is, it's going to be good. But yeah, it's good to get some different eyes in there. Just keep things fresh. And again, it's a big addition who's seen a lot of football. He'll help Dowell Loggins and just everyone in that wide receiver room. And you have a young budding star in Nick Harbor. And I think, again, a guy who's seen that much football is going to help him because, Harbor is kind of this freak athlete. But, Coley's seen enough football to kind of know what, especially in the SEC as well. I think the SEC experience is the biggest thing here. But Coley will mold Nick Harbor and those kind of guys coming up as well. And in the portal, it's another pitch, when you have a coach with this much experience. So a lot of good things with the James Coley hire. I'm excited to see, meet him and see how this goes coming up here for the wide receiver room. But that's another thing that is big. Tyler, if you were to give me one portal addition, I guess besides the likes of Rocket Sanders, because he's to me at least, Rocket Sanders is the guy that you can just be like, that guy is, going to make a difference at this point because the transfer portal class is far from completed. But if you were to give me one guy besides Rocket Sanders, who would be, the guy that you would be like, all right, like this guy is, coming here for business, and keep your eye out on him.
Yeah, and I'm pulling up my list. They've added so many guys in the transfer portal and make sure I'm not overlooking anybody. I'm really excited about Demetrius Knight, to be honest with you. That's a guy that's been around the game for a while. Obviously was at Georgia Tech for a couple of years and played sparingly and went to UNC Charlotte to get on the field a little bit more and completely balled out. Was all AAC linebacker and really was all over the field there. And when you look at an area that suddenly became a position of need where you had Pup Howard and Stone Blanton going to the transfer portal pretty close together, to be able to add a guy like that, again, somebody that's just played a lot of football and, obviously was a top performer in his conference a season ago. I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to come in and do because there's that opening spot for a second guy at linebacker. Of course, Debo Williams going to be the number one guy right there in the middle of the defense and was one of the best tacklers in the SEC this past season. And it's going to, be dependent on what kind of scheme they decide to run, if they stick more with 4-2-5 or kind of keep going in the direction of that 3-3-5 like we saw them do towards the end of the season, which again helped Bam Martin Scott come along. And it would be interesting to see how they kind of use the linebackers. But I think Demetrius Knight can certainly be that guy that is maybe the number 2 starter in the middle of your defense if you're only keeping 2 linebackers, or maybe the third guy if you're kind of doing the 3 thing. But excited to see what he's able to do. Kind of a sideline to sideline guy, very explosive, very athletic, and see what he can add to this room.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And, I think in terms of departures, I think Stone Blanton and Pup Howard, those are a little bit better felt in terms of the Carolina fans. Those 2 guys are guys that put in a lot for this program, especially through the injuries that you suffered at linebacker and just kind of how those last couple seasons have gone. Those 2 guys were putting their heart and soul in, every single snap they were on the field. So I think when those 2 guys make their way back, obviously Pup, staying in the division and Stone Blanton going back home. Both guys actually going back home. Pup.
Hey, remember, no more divisions anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But they are playing Florida next fall, right?
No, the Florida, Tennessee, and Georgia not on the schedule.
Yeah, you're not going to see Pup Howard right away, and then I don't think you play Mississippi State either. But I'm sure they're going to get in. within either next year, at least Florida. I don't know Mississippi State, but again, we know the ties with Emily Beamer and the ties to Mississippi State. So I'm assuming that would. But long story short, yeah, those two departures for the two linebackers, not as sour as the one with Juice Wells. I think, if those guys are going to come back, it's going to be kind of a hard felt thing. Those guys were putting as much as they could, giving 100% whenever they were on the field for South Carolina. So the fans should not, again, if they were to make it back to Williams-Brice, treat them well. So yeah, in terms of my transfer portal guy to, I guess, look for, besides, the obvious of, like I said, Rocket Sanders, I would have to go either Gage Larvadain. I think two wide receivers between Gage Larvadain and Jared Brown could really make an impact. And then I'm also looking at, where was he? There's so many players, Tyler. I apologize. The edge.
It's a really long list. It's going to take a while to remember all these names.
It does. And then I was also – so Kyle Kennard on the edge, sure. You want a veteran to bring up Dylan Stewart. Again, so many names. Mike and I, we've been forgetting them all the time. But SD Scout guy says it is criminal we don't play UGA next season. Absolutely. I think that. And then Florida's a pretty big rivalry, even though they've kind of curb stomped you a little bit the last couple of years. But, I think Florida's got some legs to it still.
Yeah, well, those are the three of the teams that you've obviously gotten used to playing every year for the past 30 years, and Georgia is literally the closest physical team to you in the SEC at basically about a 3-hour drive, and it doesn't make sense that they're not on the schedule. But it's the ebbs and flows of the new world of college football, and we just unfortunately have to get used to it.
Makes it a little easy for you there, Mr. Athens graduate, but we'll leave that there.
I won't run into that awkward week this fall like I did last year.
Yes, exactly. Well, and our guy Matt Vereen, he's a Mizzou grad as well. So
okay,
we try to stay away from that. Yeah. William Jones says got to keep Rocket Sanders healthy. Absolutely. But the guys you brought in to help with that, in case Rocket, again, knocking on wood there, goes down, you should be happy with Oscar Attaway and Jawarn Howell. Attaway, I think, could be a stud if the kid from North Texas. His film really asked me, anybody, like, really in the running back room. Rocket Sanders is the one guy that's, like, proven himself and the surefire, all right, addition we've seen. Because, again, in the transfer portal, you don't really know, right? There's so many, guys could go one place and then not perform. I think if you wanted to say this guy is going to show up and make a difference, it's going to be Rocket. And then obviously the two guys behind him, Oscar Attaway and golly, I'm forgetting his name.
Jawarn Howell.
Yeah, Jawarn Howell, are going to make a difference for sure.
And we become, that's a really good point that you brought up there. We become preconceived to really kind of look at where guys come from and look at the school and say, okay, well, this guy was at Arkansas or in like Monkel Goodwin coming up from Alabama. Oh, Alabama guy. He's definitely going to be a superstar, whatever it may be. And, yes, while you think, okay, this guy was a 4-star guy at Alabama, whatever it may be, that would lead you to believe that he's going to be good. That's not always the indication. We'll brought up Juice Wells several times in this show already. You look at a guy like Juice Wells who balled out at what was then an FCS James Madison, and I wasn't here at this point in time, but I'm sure there were a lot of people that are like, well, that doesn't mean he can do it at the SEC level, and he came in the year that he was healthy at least, and did do it at the SEC level. So just looking at where these guys come from is not always an indication of how good or how bad they're going to be. And again, Mario Anderson coming up from D2, we didn't know if he was going to be able to play at the SEC level, and for the hand that he was dealt and having a poor offensive line, performed pretty well. So I condition people to know, don't look at the star ranking coming out of high school. Don't look at what school they're coming from. Look at what they put on film and kind of go from there. And again, it's hard to tell. And, you can never predict these things 100%, but I'm excited about Attaway and Howell myself, because those are guys that made the most of their opportunities at their respective schools. And I'll be excited what they can do in this running back room for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, absolutely. Known viewer, Mike Yuva says, watching the walkthrough beats Packers greater than beating Packers and Cowboys. Yeah, I would agree. I'm not the biggest fan of either of those two teams. Tyler and I were joking about that beforehand. Yeah, my Bears fandom will not let me watch that game. So we're having a show right in the middle of it.
I'm
Williams says hi to
I'm
Mike.
keeping an eye on it. You're not missing anything.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say the go pack go thing, but if I were to be picking a team to root for, it would definitely be these heads up there in Wisconsin. But yeah, so okay, I was gonna talk about another player too, Hunt. I think Brady Hunt has a lot of potential to, be. It's gonna be the Bash brothers between Josh Simon and Brady Hunt because Brett can block, and then when he's not blocking, he will get into space and run guys over. And Josh Simon is the type where you float him out into space, he can block, but it's not his primary thing. And then you have the addition of Brady Hunt coming off of that. I think the legacy, I guess, that Trey Knox is leaving is sticking around with Simon. Kind of the attitude of giving your all every play. It's sticking around and part of the whole culture fit in the tight end room. You're losing coach Joe. Again, I think Brady Hunt is going to be a very, very big addition. Obviously, you had the drama with his commitment, but he's here. His agent, also the agent of Rattler, really good one. Saying, hey, that's not something we do. Honor your commitment. So he's here. And so Tyler, walk me through what you're seeing from Hunt in that whole situation.
Yeah, like you said, kind of a weird situation where he was committed and then he wasn't, and then he was back here again. So you never really know until these guys are officially on campus, I guess, is the moral of the story there. Yeah, but yeah, what I saw on tape out of him, and obviously he had the injury that he dealt with. So, that is certainly an area of concern with a guy like him, but really good size, 6'5", and like you said, kind of taking that place that Trey Knox left behind. But I really like what we have out of the tight end room as a whole. Again, Josh Simon coming back for another year. That's another guy that's just played a lot of football and stepped up when he needed to, especially when Trey Knox dealt with some injuries this past season. But I'm excited for Brady Hunt potentially be that number 2 guy and, kind of see how the rest of this, tight end room comes along because they were featured so much in this offense this past year. That was the big deal people had with Marcus Satterfield, the past couple of years for is he doesn't like to utilize the tight ends. Well, Dow Loggins does like to utilize the tight ends. And I think Brady Hunt, very capable set of hands, what I've seen on tape. And, should be a nice addition to this offense this year, however you want to phrase it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's still one more portal window to go, which is crazy to be saying because Tyler, I mean, I'm sure you're tired of, talking about it, following it as well. And it's only going to get worse these next couple of years because the NCAA seems to be just opening it even more and making this even more so a free agency kind of thing. But yeah, Brady Hunt, he was ripping up Tennessee when he was at Ball State. Shane was talking about the film in that game, and I went back and watched that film, and I can see very clearly why they would want a guy like that. And again, he played at Ball State. He knows how to block. As I bumped my table there, but yeah. So Brady Hunt, look out for him. And that's kind of the last guy that I'm really, I guess, as of now, looking at in this transfer portal class and saying all right, those are my guys. You're loaded up at running back. You restock back. You need to go get a quarterback. We talked about that a little bit. But Tyler, if there were one more position or a couple more guys besides, looking back, like I talked about, but a couple guys that you would want to go see them. You don't have to give me particular guys, but positions of area that you would still need to go out and pull if you're Shane Beamer.
And yeah, they added Simpkins the other day on the interior offensive line and Parks the other day out of Oklahoma. There's so many bodies in the offensive line room, and the biggest problem last year was just guys couldn't stay healthy. I don't know if maybe you want to go out and add one more out of there, just kind of seeing that might be one of those kind of things is you kind of see where you're at in spring practice and see where guys factor in and see what your starting offensive line is going to look like, and maybe that's an area that you assess, but you also have to keep up with the fact that you're very close, and I think at last count, technically over the scholarship limit as of right now. Now, there's the anticipation that there's going to be maybe a couple guys currently on scholarship. They're going to want to leave in the transfer portal after the spring window after spring practice, when they have to sit down, kind of tell them where they stand as far as going into the fall and stuff like that. So there may be a few more spots that you can add based on that. But again, up to this point, outside of quarterback, I think they've done a very good job of addressing the areas of need, especially when it comes to the defense. And, kind of excited to see where these guys factor in this fall.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. And I think, you revamped the defensive line as well. That was reason why Boogie Huntley and Tonka Hemingway were even considering the portal is because they just weren't getting any help. And Shane made sure to do that. And I think that shows you too when you have veteran guys like that, especially instant guys. all they want is just a little bit of help. People were talking, Twitter was a little blaze when they heard there's the guys leaving. It's like, oh, it's NIL, they're trying to chase the bag, all that stuff. Well, no.
Right.
The real reason was that, Alex Huntley and Tonka Hemingway were getting double teamed all year. I can remember seeing Alex Huntley's mom tweeting about all the double teams and the holdings and that kind of thing. When you add a couple guys in the defensive line, it forces offensive lines to prepare for more looks and also just more bodies. When you have to prepare for like an offense like Tennessee in the SEC. I think it's big. It's very big to get them some support. So that way you can just focus on having Boogie Huntley and Tonka just, instead of worrying about having enough gas left in the tank and, playing certain pass rushes and all that, they can give it everything and just go out and disrupt.
Well, and not just having bodies in the room, but having so many experienced guys in the room. And like I said earlier, that defensive line is going to be the most senior laden group on this, entire team. And just counting on the scholarship breakdown here, 5 of these guys on the roster technically as seniors, 3 of those guys as juniors. Now, yeah, you're going to have to address the depth of that, in recruiting and transfer portal going forward. But that's a very experienced room with the guys that have played a lot of football. And again, it was one of the fewer bright spots on the defense this past year at times. Again, the defense as a whole struggled overall, but the defensive line had its moments certainly. And again, like everything else, just kind of excited to see how these guys progress and what it looks like when the season rolls around.
Yeah, absolutely. William asks, any thoughts on Lenore's design QB keepers? Didn't see much of that. Yeah, I mean, when he was in the game, I don't think they were going to do design QB keepers just to keep his legs from getting trapped up under somebody, especially like that. He's still working in the weight program, but obviously he's got really good control of his legs, really agile, can move well. I like the design QB run. I think, you got to keep him from getting those legs from getting trapped up there and then just twisted in any which way. If you can kind of get him to the outside, let him swing those legs out either for a slide or something like that. Just, let him avoid dangerous situations. I'm all good for the design QB run. And I think it adds an element to your offense, but you just got to be able to do it safely, especially with, a kid like Sellers who has, all the physicals to allow you to do that. But if you push it too much, then he breaks.
Yeah, that falls in line with more of his natural ability as quarterback. And again, we saw the arm strength as well. So it's not like he's just a one-dimensional guy that can only run and can't throw. So you can do a little bit of both. And I think when you look at, especially bringing a guy like a Rocket Sanders that ran pretty much that same type of offense with KJ Jefferson at Arkansas, some similarities there with what they were doing with the RPOs. And I'll be interested to see how Dow Loggins adapts this offense, similarly that he did last season to Spencer Rattler and his skill set. Not that Spencer Rattler couldn't run, that just wasn't his main MO. He took off when he needed to and made plays with his feet, to get out of trouble. But this is kind of a different style of offense with having a quarterback that's more keen to just running the ball in a traditional sense on design quarterback run. So I'll be interested to see how they, change the offense as the offseason goes along and, what kind of dynamic that can add. Because again, in the few bits that we did see Lenore Sellers out on the field this past year, you saw that athleticism, you also saw that speed when he was able to take off. And I think that 36-yard touchdown run they had against Vanderbilt, it's like, okay, there's that extra gear that we've been hearing about. And just kind of excited to see what he can do and what we assume is going to be his first year as a starter in the SEC.
Yeah, absolutely. Kid has a very big, potential and high ceiling, going into this year. So it's going to be really interesting to see all of that. And, obviously we are a football leaning show. Todd says, look forward to our defensive line this year. Jennifer, yes, we'll work on the connect stuff. Sometimes it's hard. We're working on a studio, something like that, just to get something better. But the weather's hasn't been the best, so bear with us. Southern Cal beat UCLA, so South Carolina is the only undefeated women's basketball team now. SC Scout guy, look out for it. Heck yeah. No surprise there, Tyler. We can touch on the women's team real quick as we transition into basketball tail end of the show. But Tyler, this women's team, are they better than last year's team? Is that possible?
They are different than last year's team, which is what you should have expected because, again, the freshman class moved on, the greatest class that South Carolina's ever seen, maybe the greatest class they will ever see. So they had to go and make things and they knew the team was going to look a little bit different this year. I think the addition of Tahina Pau can't be understated with just what she's added to the offense, where now they're one of the better shooting 3 teams in the nation, which they haven't had to be in the past couple of years just because they have that physical smash mouth defense where they haven't had to go out there and shoot the 3 ball. But that adds even more to that, where I think they're even more dangerous. And again, have they been perfect this year? They haven't. But there's got a lot of young talent that's coming along. And again, kind of excited to see how they're going to progress, but so far so good. And as the commenter just mentioned there, the lone undefeated team in the nation right now is we've seen not only women's basketball, but men's basketball too. A lot of crazy upsets through what's only been about half a season so far.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And Dawn's squad, I mean, obviously everyone's gunning for that now. They shouldn't be as good as they are. It's ridiculous. I have a theory that like every time Dawn's teams go, to the dance or come close and then lose, every time they go that far and don't win it, they're coming back next year with a vengeance. And obviously you lost all that talent from last year's team, but somehow, you added it in Tahina Pau back in terms of, the point guard. She's a nice boost to Raven Johnson. And then, Camila Cardoso is, turning into the big that you wanted her to be. Obviously last year she was kind of behind Aaliyah Boston's shadow a little bit. Now she's stepping up in a big way. And she is, your franchise, your program big right now. And that's a big thing. Chloe Kitts stepping up as well. She's had a lot of really good games. So, the thing that excites me the most about this women's basketball team is that, anybody can score and anybody can kind of pop off on any given night and win them a game. And Dawn's being able to replicate that and, give people nights off. The way that she toys with the lineup is also crazy because she'll give, somebody a night off and then, the whatever role player or whoever, just happens to be in the lineup is going to find their stroke and they have that confidence going down, the rest of the season. Right. So that's the genius of Dawn Staley too. Being able to put people in different situations and allow, people to get experience like that because, I mean, winning just isn't enough at this point. Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, we were all disappointed to see them fall to Iowa in the Final Four last year. And again, the national champion was a team that you had beaten in the regular season that theoretically you had a rematch with them. You probably could have beaten them as well. And speaking of which, you got that road trip to LSU coming up here in a couple of weeks. They just lost earlier on today. We'll see what kind of team they are when we go down to Baton Rouge in a couple of weeks. Got the matchup with UConn coming down the road as well. So plenty of tough games left on the schedule for South Carolina. And, the other night when they played against Mississippi State and only won that game by 19 points, everybody's saying, what's wrong with South Carolina? Are they giving up so many points on defense? Like, you're in a pretty good place when your program only wins the game by 19 points and you're talking about what's wrong with this team. So yeah, plenty of good basketball left to play. And, again, like the commenter said, the only undefeated team left in the nation, which is something that South Carolina routinely seems to be hanging their hat on.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, tune into our basketball shows on Wednesday nights. I believe this Wednesday we have none other than Brad Muller. So I'm really looking forward to that interview again. Yeah, our women's basketball guests have been great. We've had Hamp Dizzy, the only Jonathan Hampton. He's more plugged in with that women's program than anyone else. Chris Wellbaum does it better than anyone else. And then, Brad Muller. I'm really, really excited. That should be this Wednesday at 6 o'clock, I believe, 6 or 7. Stay posted to Jack Veltri and I's Twitter. We'll keep you posted on that, but that should be a really good interview. But yeah, this team is crazy. And then Todd brings up a good point. The men's basketball team had a good win yesterday. Absolutely. And again, we'll talk more women's hoops with Brad on Wednesday, but Tyler, the men's basketball team, long week. The men's basketball team had a very good win yesterday on the road at Mizzou. Big win for Lance guys, being able to bounce back from the walloping you took in Tuscaloosa. Walk me through what you're seeing from those guys and the quarter zips, the fighting quarter zips.
Yeah, so I think a mark of a good team is winning a game that you really shouldn't win. And yesterday, they were behind for basically 95% of that game, and they still find a way to win with tying it up right there at the end of regulation, then ultimately kind of taking off there in overtime and picking up the victory. the game the other night against Alabama and Tuscaloosa, and look, I don't think a lot of people were picking South Carolina to win that game. You just wanted to see them go there and at least put in a good performance. And hey, you were down by 1 point at halftime, feeling pretty good about things, but just got annihilated in the second half of that game. And it really seemed like South Carolina wasn't playing its brand of basketball. They play slow-paced, more defensive-minded basketball. They've done that all year, and that's what they've hung their hat on. And when you go in there to play a team like Alabama that's very up-tempo and fast-paced, South Carolina tried to match that with them, and it just didn't work for them because that's not the kind of team that they are. They got very sloppy with their turnovers, kept giving the ball over a bunch, especially in the second half of that game that, came back to bite them. Not to mention they went like 7 minutes to start the second half without scoring. You're not going to be very successful when you do that. And I think some of that carried over into yesterday's game as well. Once again, very careless when it came to the turnovers. Meechie Johnson, well, I'm sure we'll get to him in a second, has had 9 turnovers over these past 2 games. He only had 20 all season coming in. So he's out of rhythm a little bit. But all of that being said, they still found a way to win yesterday's game in an environment out there in Como that it's not been good to South Carolina over the years. So that's a mark of a team that's made a lot of improvements, because a year ago, that's a game that they probably lose by 8 or 10 points, just given the way that they played. So you have a lot of experienced guys that have obviously come in from the transfer portal. And again, outside of these past couple games, Meechie Johnson is literally one of the best players in the SEC. So when all those guys are clicking, you have good performances. And even a night like last night where Meechie wasn't playing his best, BJ Mack stepped up and had a great game after having some shaky performances over the past couple weeks himself. So, I think this team's really good. They're going to lose more games in conference play. That's just the nature of the beast and how tough the SEC is. But I certainly think they're better than being projected to finish last or next to last, whatever that was, back in media day. So they're coming along really strongly, and got some tough tests coming up. Georgia's was on a hot streak until they fell to Tennessee yesterday. Tennessee's not far down the line as well, and plenty of other good teams in the SEC. But I like what I've seen out of them so far. And again, a pretty sizable jump from year 1 to year 2 for Lamont Paris.
Yeah. Absolutely. A lot of good things you just told me, Tyler. I love all of that. I think, this Missouri win was a very big one in terms of bouncing back. You didn't play your best basketball, but you still found a way to win, right? You're led by Meechie Johnson. Jacoby Wright, continues to be one of the best role players in the country, stuck around for year 2. I know you're with that. Carter left. You saw a couple of those guys leave after year 1. Jacoby Wright sticks around and, is continuing to be a very, very big and crucial piece for this team. Meechie Johnson, again, the guards that, they brought in, Talon Cooper, Miles Studi, they didn't have their best games against Missouri, but they found a way to win, especially after you got blown out on the road in your last game by 30-some points in Tuscaloosa. So just being able to respond like that, being able to flush it, I think is a very, very big asset for this team. And sure, Mizzou's not the best, but again, it's a lot of travel too, right? Tuscaloosa's not close. Neither is the other Columbia and Missouri. It's freezing. You had to get out there early. There were a lot of excuses that could have been made to lose this game if you're South Carolina, and you did. You battled through all of those and got an OT win in impressive fashion. In Missouri. Now you come back home against Georgia, I believe, right, on Tuesday.
That's correct.
As I'm pulling it up right now, yeah. You're home against Georgia on Tuesday. It will be on ESPNU, 9 p.m. tip. Little SEC after dark action. Might try to make my way over to that one I believe they're giving away quarter zip T-shirts for the student section. It's awesome.
I can't say I'm a fan of the 9 p.m. tips. Big fan of 7 o'clock tips. Those 9 p.m.s are a little bit late for me.
Yeah, it's a little tough. I've got a comedy mic on Tuesdays, so I've got a tough decision to make. Let's just say that. Yeah. But yes, so you have UGA on Tuesday, then you're at Arkansas, another tough team on the road, and then a week from Tuesday, you have number 6 Kentucky in front of your home fans at Colonial Life. So Tyler, SC Scout Guy asked right now at this point in the season, I'm going to ask you this as well, but do you think the men's basketball team can make the tournament? Because if you were to give me a prediction at this point, I don't know if you can really. You're so far in SEC play, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think they can, and I think Lenardi will put out his latest bracketology either tomorrow or Tuesday after the weekend
Yeah.
games. I'll wrap up, and South Carolina, I think going into this weekend was an 11 seed, so they should be somewhere around there with that overtime win against Missouri. And look, the SEC is it's a deep conference this year, and there have been talks of can you get 9, maybe even 10 teams into the conference, which is an absurd number. But again, the league is so good, and we've seen so much parity through these first couple weeks. Just over this past weekend alone, and some upsets going on there. So South Carolina is kind of right where they need to be. And again, that was a poor performance the other night against Alabama, who's legitimately one of the best teams in the country. But again, it's a different game each and every night when you're playing in the SEC. And I just love the experience that South Carolina has with all these guys from various places that have just played a lot of basketball. And again, to be able to go out there in Como, a place that's not been good to South Carolina over the years, and win despite not playing your best game and your best player not having his best game, to the point where at the end of regulation and through about half of overtime, it wasn't even on the court. And they still went out there and found a way to win. I think that speaks volumes to how good this team is. And again, it's a long conference slate and through the SEC tournament and all that kind of stuff. So there's going to be ups and downs. But as of right now, I like everything that I've seen out of them. And if we're putting the field of 64 together, South Carolina will be a part of that right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I've said it before and I'll say it again about this men's team. Their work is left in front of them. I think Alabama was a big one, but again, it's so early on in the SEC slate. Your story is far from over. Again, I'm circling the Kentucky game next Tuesday, but you have a lot of big ones left in this SEC slate. If I were to circle a second one, I'm circling, Senior Day, Tennessee. March 6th. It's March. You have the chance. I'm guessing Tennessee is going to continue on their run. Currently ranked number 5 in the country. They're going to stand and bang up there in the top 5, top 10. That's going to be a big game in March. If you want to excite your fans, if you're going to make the tournament as well, I mean, you'll know a lot more then. But if you're going to the tournament and you want to excite your fans going into the tournament, beat Tennessee on March 6th.
I will say this: Colonial Life Arena is a raucous environment this year. We have a fan base that is obviously ready to support a good men's basketball team. They've done a good job with that so far this season. Against South Carolina's 2 losses have come on the road, but getting a team like Kentucky at home, getting Tennessee at home later in the season, we get a good crowd, we get a good environment, we make that a raucous atmosphere. That's going to be a tough place to play, even for really good teams like that. And I think that, just adds to the motivation factor for South Carolina, knowing you have a good home environment that teams don't want to come in and play. And again, those are going to be big matchups. But for what we've seen so far, I think South Carolina and Lamont Paris can be up to the task.
Yeah. Absolutely. Plenty more to talk about with the men's squad. But Tyler, I think we did a pretty good job of it tonight. Before you out here, obviously, I want to let you plug everything. And I also forgot the ads last week, so we'll touch on that. We will hit friends over at Liberty Tax first before we let you plug everything. We'll plug everything here. Liberty Tax ID is an uncertain feeling you get before you tax, but you don't have to go through it alone. The tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for a refund, call in the tax team at Liberty Tax. They're fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to the tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood, 9 to 9 weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start through the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in. Give a call to our boy Tax Documents, and when you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call on your screen right now. And for those listening, 803-462-5576. Once again, give them a call, 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs. The show is also brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond of the Movement Mortgage Network. Dwayne, great show, guys. We appreciate you tuning in, Dwayne, on this Sunday night. But yes, our good friend Clint Hammond, in need of help with your mortgage, calling our good friend Clint Hammond of the Movement Mortgage Network. He's been in the mortgage industry since 2003, which allows him to help everyone from the first-time home buyer to the complicated and complex jumbo buyer. Whether you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance, nothing is more important than a well-thought-out financial strategy that comes with 5-star customer service. He's even helped out our very own Wes Mitchell and former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth with their mortgages. So give our guy Clint a call, Follow us on all of our Gamecock Central live programming. We love them for it. 803-771-6933. Once again, 803-771-6933 for all of your mortgage needs. So, Tyler, obviously you're a recurring guest, so we know you were of 107.5 The Game, but, I still give everyone a chance to plug where they're at. Feel free to use this time as such. Plug whatever you got going on in your life.
Yeah, so absolutely. Every day on 107.5 The Game, normally from 9 until 3. We are out tomorrow because it is Martin Luther King Day. We'll be back on Tuesday. I'll be filling in for Bill Gunter on Tuesday morning. So I'll be on from 6 a.m. until noon as opposed to my usual 9 a.m. to 3. But that's where you can usually find me from 9 until 3. I host the Extra Point from 9 until 11. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with Wes Mitchell and Chris Clark from 11 to 12. And then me and Terry Ford do the halftime show from 12 until 3. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have the Garnet Trust Hour from 10 until 11, which I've been told this week we should have more player guests back in studio now that guys are back on campus and all that kind of stuff. We had Lenora Sellers on just a couple weeks ago, which is really cool to talk to him. So hopefully we'll get some more football players in here very, very soon. Of course, you can listen to us here locally on in Columbia on 107.5 on your FM station. If you're out in Myrtle Beach, 100.3 FM. If you're out in Florence, 100.5 FM. We have our 107.5 The Game app, which you can download on the App Store, Apple's App Store, or Google Play Store. And we just recently started live streaming The Game TV. So if you go to YouTube, search The Game TV, you can find us. You can watch all of our shows all day long. We have cameras in our studios, thanks to our friends over at Integrated Media. So you can see our beautiful smiling faces all day long as we talk all things sports. So it's impossible to not find us, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're doing so much stuff with you here at Gamecock Central. We appreciate it. Again, Bill Anderson, Joe is the best new addition to GC, and Tyler's the best new addition to 107.5. We appreciate that, Bill. We appreciate you tuning in tonight as well. Tyler, thank you for joining me. It's always a pleasure. And you guys go listen to Tyler's show. I've been a guest on his show as well. It's so much fun. You got a good setup there at 107.5 The Game. So be sure to listen to them when you're in your car, at work, anytime. You can find them, like Tyler said, on the app or at 107.5 The Game FM. So that will do it for us for this week's edition of The Walkthrough. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Had a good bit of you guys in here tonight. So again, we're going to keep this thing live next week. We will see who the guest is. Again, I like to try to keep that under wraps until the very end. But again, you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday nights. Enjoy the rest of your weeks. Thank you for tuning in, and that'll do it.